evening. How are we all this evening? Are we nicely toasty? I might look a little bit flushed because I've been painting outside this afternoon, so it was quite warm, and despite my best efforts, Marvin decided to lay right out in the sun and just, suck it all up. And it's like, mate, he did eventually go inside, but yeah, he wasn't having any of it. Right, let me just make sure I'm on everything, laptop and stuff, so I can see if anybody is commenting. I can see if people are there. I think we've got some people. Say hello if we've got people. Right, let's put that there like that. Then I can see. So comments don't always come up on the laptop. Hello, Mira. Right. Okay, so this evening we are going to be playing with some stamps. I've put a selection together, possibly ones that you might not immediately go for yourselves because they fall into the category of cards and projects for men, which I know a lot of people struggle with. I love these stamps because they are not just for men. They are just beautiful images. We've got lots of transport, trains and fishing, and the planes and the double-decker buses and things like that. So I say they're not specifically aimed at men, but obviously they do make making men's cards a little bit easier. They're all on the website in the section for that. But what I thought we'd do is we'd do 5 different techniques with them. And then I was going to show you a little kinetic card. Now, I am anti-measuring, and Paul hasn't got time to do a template for this. So I had to come up with a way of doing it, which means you don't have to measure. And it is really cool. So we'll get the 5 techniques done, which will give us the toppers to go on to the mechanism. And I'll show you how to make the mechanism. Hi, Maxine. Hi, Linda. And then, we've got plenty to play with. So let me switch to that one. So yeah, so we'll be using a selection of these stamps. The Spitfire over the town, I do not have very many of those left. It will be first come, first serve on those. Got a few more of that Spitfire. All the others we've got some of. The reason I was thinking of these sort of ones is certainly around here we have a lot of steam rallies at this time of the year, and it is a popular thing to go to, and they quite often have craft tents and stuff like that. So I thought if you are in the area of doing those sort of things, it would be a nice one to do. Go away, pop-ups. I can't read my messages now. Pop-ups. Go away, gone. Hi Hazel, hi Sue, hi Helsbeth, hi other Sue. We used to sometimes at craft work, when we had workshops, Sue Fountain, Sue Carpenter and Sue Davis all used to come at the same time, and then we used to have 2 Wendy's as well. It used to get very confusing. Right, so there's some of the stamps we're going to be using, and we're going to start with the train. So I have tried to be incredibly organised, and I have got paper and everything all cut and ready for the size, so that we should get this all done. Right, so I'm using a VersaFine just because I found it and it's a nice colour. Okay, so I'm just inking up my train and I'm stamping it in the middle of this square. Now VersaFine dries quickly, but I do want to emboss this, so I'm gonna have to move quite quickly. Okay, so hence why I had my paper underneath. I'm just going to put my lid back on that because it is quite warm up here. Okay, and there you can see it's taken the embossing powder, but because I'm using the blue VersaFine, if the embossing powder doesn't fully take, I've still got that strength of colour underneath. Okay, so I'm using that burgundy embossing powder again because I just really like the effect you get with it over a colour. It's close to black but not completely black. Okay, so I'm just going to heat set that because, you know, I thought really, really hot evening, let's do loads of stuff with heat embossing. Let's melt completely. Right, so I'm just going around getting this to set. Probably could have just left it outside. I've been painting for Paul outside today and the paint was drying so quickly, which was good because we needed to get extra coats on. Now I'm just going to twist that so I can make sure that I have got it all. Because sometimes when you're using a dark embossing powder on a dark ink, it is actually quite difficult to see whether you've got it all. So just give it a little sort of wobble so that the light catches, and if it's somewhere where it's not shiny, you know you haven't got it all. Okay, so there's our tray and it just looks lovely like that, but we're going to do a little bit of something with it. So I've got a little bit of patterned paper cut to exactly the same size, so it's not a mat. What we're going to do is we're going to tear top and bottom here so that the train is sort of coming out of it, a bit like out of a tunnel. So just a little bit more. Obviously, we've got the paper here. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll that away to reveal the image underneath. And I'm doing this one first because this is going to have to go on the top of our card because it's got this very sort of 3D element to it. So what I'm doing is I'm using my paintbrush just to get this paper rolling going. Okay, so that it doesn't, because it's quite a thick patterned paper here. Okay, there we go. Hi Julie, I think I've got everybody. Right, so the idea being that you can just see the train peeking out of there. Okay, so one technique done, and I just thought for the train it worked quite nicely. So I am going to now secure the roll with a bit of glue so it's not going to come unrolled. Okay, so I'm going to secure it with a bit of roll, bit of glue. Okay, and I'm going to put some glue on the back there, like that. Secure that down. Obviously you could colour in behind there and everything, but my general rule of thumb is if I'm having a busy coloured in foreground, I keep the background fairly muted, and then actually that makes it pop out. And again, I could have torn a bit, you know, a bit more to the top there so you can see more of the train, but this is just really to show you the technique that we can then add on to this fabulous kinetic card that we're going to do in a bit. Okay, so mat that one onto a little bit of black. And as I said last week, with this burgundy embossing powder, it's not as harsh as black, it's a little bit more forgiving, but if you mat it onto black, it tricks your mind into thinking it is black, but it's just a little bit softer. Okay, so that's our first panel done. Okay. Ta-da! Right, next, bus and some bright red card because you've got to have a red bus. And I've got some pale blue and some black. And this is a really, really simple one. And what I love about this one is it's almost got like a cartoon pop art feel to it. So if you've got any youngsters who love buses, it's a really nice one because it has a sort of that fun element to it. And I am going to emboss again just to make sure that everything is nice and dominant, because obviously I'm going on to red card here. So that's quite a strong colour. So I don't want a wishy-washy stamped image. I need it to be proper bold. And by adding heat embossing onto the top, it's just going to emphasise those lines and the image a little bit more. Okay, so pressing that down. And you can see it's just such a fabulously fun stamped image. Now I'm simplifying this technique a little bit because I have been known to do different colours and pick out things like the adverts, but because I was going to say because of time, but actually if I can find a little bit of dark blue, I had some here earlier, I will do the adverts in dark blue. I think they might just pop. Hang on. You see, this is what happens when I try and be incredibly organised and have everything prepped. I change my mind. I'm rubbish like that, aren't I? No, can't find the blue, so we'll stick with the original plan. Okay, right. Back into the pot. I love about embossing powder is you feel like you're using loads, you tip it back into the pot and actually it appears to have more in the pot than was when you started. Right, so there he is on the red. I mean, it just works so well for a bus. So there's a couple of buses on there, but they're just lovely and bold. Okay. Just get this going. Also means I can handle it straight away and be cutting out and stuff like that. Also gives you a bit better guide for cutting out. If you're not overly confident, you've sort of got a barrier to follow when you use heat embossing. Okay, so again, just making sure that it's gone shiny all over. Now, I am going to cut away the road, but what I might want to do is actually stamp it onto here in a minute so that we're still grounding our image, even though we're cutting it out. So, the reason I chose the bus for this technique is it's such a fabulously easy one to cut out. Round we go, look at that. And obviously, red on buses, it just is ideal. And it is just as simple as cutting it out quite nice and boldly. This is not a subtle, understated way of doing a stamp like this. Okay. So it does look nice if you actually do the adverts. I am going to just have another little look because I think I might have. Now here I'm going to have to use a little bit of artistic license because the shadow from the wheel just sort of blurred the lines a little bit, but you know it's a round wheel. So you've got your bus and he's pinging already, but I'm going to have him going against the blue. See, it does look really nice, but would it look better if I do some adverts? But the great thing with doing the adverts is if you don't like them, you just don't stick them on. So what have I got under here? Black, red, cream. I'm sure I had some blue. Yes, there it is. Right. So let's get the adverts. So what have we got? We've got that front one. Well, let's sort of just do that midsection of the bus and see what we get. Okay. Flick it over. So again, I'm not wanting the whole image here, so stamping doesn't have to be perfect. That's the bit I want. Okay. And I'd say the great thing with doing this way is if I do decide I like them, I can use them. If I don't like them, don't have to use them. You know, I'm not ruining the stamped image I've got there. I've not suddenly thought, oh, do you know what, I'll come in with a gel pen and colour it in and then go, oh, I don't like it. By doing it this way, if you don't like it, you don't use it. So just give this a chance to start melting. And I'm not as worried about the powder melting everywhere because, I say, we're not going to use it all. So I'm just concentrating in that middle area there. Okay. So just to make it easy, I'm going to pop them out. So I think I want that one there. So just, but I'm keeping it with this sort of pop art style of doing it. You don't want to grab loads of different colours. I do think I'm gonna use them. I want the Kia one off the front. There we go. And the reason I went with blue is because I've chosen a blue background. If I had a green background, a pale green background, I would have gone with a green for the adverts, just so that it's sort of, it's a different colour, but it's within the same family. So it coordinates, and also the fact that that is blue in the background there does make these pop a little bit more. Yep, I think I'm happy with that. Right. Okay. Chuck them under there. I tidied up earlier, so I've got an excuse. There we go. Bit of glue. Now, obviously, you'll probably notice that the bus is bigger than my background here. But I'm not deciding yet how far and how much of the bus we're going to see, because we might have it where it's coming on a little way, or we might have it, I mean, it doesn't fit completely, so we can't fit it completely, and I'm not going to sort of try and make it look like it fits, if you know what I mean, because if I sort of did it like that, and then here's my mat, it's kind of obvious that the stamp's too big for what I'm doing. So when you've got something like that, make a conscious decision to cut off a noticeable amount so that there's some of your background colour there. So it is obvious, it is a design choice that you've done. So now I know that, where I'm going to go, I am going to stamp the bus onto my background, just because I want to get some of this ground. So again, I'm just inking that bit. Okay, I just want, but I'm not going to heat emboss this. So we're going to have the bus coming in about that much. So that's going to give me my ground. Okay, it will probably put some image up there, but it doesn't matter. But what I am wanting is that ground there. So now when I come in to stick this, see, it's added the shadow and it's just grounded it and made it look, again, like it's a conscious decision. A lot of the things that we do in things like this is making it so it's obvious that we meant to do it. It's the same as I've always said, if you're doing jaunty angles. If you're doing jaunty angles, do jaunty angles. Don't just do it very slightly, because then it just looks like you haven't stuck it straight. Embrace your decisions. Okay. And what I will need to do in a minute is, when that glue's grabbed a little bit, is I'm going to trim off. So turn it over and do it from the back, and I'm going to cut along the edge there. I've got to go through embossing. So now you can see that the bus is driving onto that panel, and it's not like I just tried to fit it in. And I know I stamped and embossed that extra blue and I've cut some of it off, but if you're going to do the different colour on the adverts, you need to do it that way and then cut it off. Right, so I'm just going to add a bit of glue to here, and then I'm going to put it under my trusty iron for that to start to dry, so that we can work with it in a minute. Say a minute, as we've only got 2 panels of the 5 done. Might be a little bit more than a minute. Okay, so just a little black border there. And by doing the cutting after you've glued it down, you see how it goes off the edge there. And again, I haven't got some little bit of border showing. So again, it's a conscious decision. You know, I think that's just such a fun way of doing a stamp like that. Okay, right, put that one under there and put the trusty iron on it. The iron's got mica on it. Right, so that's bus and train done. We're now going for superbike, and superbike needs this acrylic block. So train comes off and goes over there, and we get superbike out. Got sticky hands. Okay, so here comes superbike. Okay, and this one we're going to keep it very simple. We're going to give it a little bit of movement. Bear with me one moment while I just have a swig. And I have to say, I am swigging my homemade cherry cordial. I remembered I'd got a load of cherries in the freezer, and I'd frozen them without stoning them. And I was like, what am I going to do with them? And I realised if I do cordial, you can cook them with the stones in it because you sieve it all anyway. So that was to cover up my mistake. Right, so I've got my piece of card, and I've got a distress oxide. Doesn't have to be a distress oxide, just a nice juicy ink pad. And I'm going to start off the page, and I'm holding it at an angle, so only the very edge is catching on the paper, and then I'm just going to drag it across, and you see how it's giving it like that sort of swooshy movement. So now when I come in with my motorbike, I love the fact that the VersaFine lids don't get lost. It's also mildly annoying that you have to keep folding it back. Maybe that's why the new VersaFine Clairs don't have that function, but it meant you never got your lids muddled up. So, and again, I'm going to have him coming off the page. We're just going to stamp that down, and with that streak of colour going along the background, it's giving it a little bit of sense of movement. Again, if you wanted to add some colour to this, you can do. But there he is, he's zooming along there. It's just got that sense of movement. Okay, very simple, that one. Right, okay, bit more, bit of glue. My brush has got a bit gunked up already. Okay, so that one onto there. So we've got 3 panels so far. And that one's going to go under the pile. Make sure when you're using wet glue for things like this, and before you weigh it down, just make sure it's still sitting straight, because the number of times I've done that and then gone to it and it's dried crooked, especially when you're dropping something like that on top. Just make sure. Maybe don't drop your iron, maybe just place it down gently. Right. Okay. So we are cracking on through. Next, okay, I've got a bit of map. Where are we going? It's upside down. We are going somewhere in France, I think this was. And we're going to go with the Morris Minor. Still one of my favourite cars. And at the age of 12, I was offered a black convertible Morris Minor. Obviously, I was 12. Had nowhere to keep it. Couldn't drive. So I had to turn it down, and oh, I'd have loved it. So again, because of the card we're doing, this isn't going to fit right on. So we're going to, again, have a conscious decision of have a little bit overhanging. And we are, again, going to stamp and emboss this because we've got a very, very busy background. You know, it's... If I just stamp it, the image might get a little bit lost. I don't know which side to have. I can't remember what page it was off, so I don't think there's any relevance for me for what page of the atlas that is. So, conscious decision to have it off the page. Okay, get that pressed down. So you can see it, but if I add embossing powder, it's going to make it pop even more. Okay, just a gentle blow. Back into the pot with the embossing powder. Making sure I'm not missing any. Evening, Sarah. Oh, that was bad pouring, wasn't it? It's really weird because this goes lumpy just in the warmth up here, but it doesn't affect it. It just... How have I missed again? This is going to take... Oh, nearly tip the whole pot over then. It's been one of those days, Butterfinger days, which is why there is a golden walnut downstairs held together with tape and glue at the moment to see if we can save it. Right. Then stand back a little bit so I can see. Okay, just make sure we're getting all of it. And if you don't think you've caught a little bit, don't just keep heating it. Stop, turn your heat gun off, check it, because the last thing you want to do is overheat it, because what happens when you overheat it is it actually soaks into the paper more and it becomes matte again. So just always just stop, have a look round and see. Right, what we want to do is to make this pop even more. So I've got a white paint pen. If you haven't got a white paint pen, you can literally do this with a paintbrush and just go round the outside. So following the lines. Okay. Where there's the shadow of the car, the paint pen won't take to because of the embossing. And I want a sort of a double line round it, because what this is doing is it's not annihilating the map. We can still see hints of it, but it's giving the car a white edge, which means it will just stand out a little bit, almost like a white shadow. And the more the paint dries, the better it looks, because it loses that shine. So there you go. It's just making it, let's just let that dry. It's just taken away. So it's, can you see, it's just making the car pop out a little bit more from the busy background. Okay. Maps and cars are perfect. And of course you get so much in these big atlases. How many are we up to? Oh yeah, we're going to have one more. We're going one more, and that's going to be map as well. Okay. Because I need plenty of time to do the actual card, although I have prepped some bits. There we go. So there's another one to go in the pile. Look at that, all neatly the same size. How incredibly organised. It's come over me. Right, next. Although I have mixed it up and now got brown paper. So again, we've got our map. And we are again going to use, I mean, this is Chitty Chitty Bang Bang car, isn't it? It's really lovely. This is nice for wedding cards, this one, because obviously it has that wedding car feel, and you can add ribbons and things like that. But I just sort of, it's a very sort of Downton Abbey kind of feel to it. Or if anybody's seen The Sorcerer's Apprentice, it reminds me of his car in that. Okay, so I'm going to, again, consciously stamp it off the page a bit. But we're going to up this even more with this one. Okay, embossing again. Also, the blue isn't quite the colour I wanted. So you don't have to have endless colours of ink. You know, if you haven't got the right colour, you may well have an embossing powder. You know, there's ways around it. And, you know, some of my VersaFine Clairs are just a little bit dry now, whereas that ink pad's nice and wet, but it's not the right colour. It's fine, I'll change it with an embossing powder. Okay, So again, just helps bring out the detail of these stamps. There you go, you can see it going around the wheel there, round, up round the lights, along the bonnet. Okay, and again, just do a little check to make sure you've got it. Now, what I want to do with this is make it feel like the car is driving out of the map. So I'm going to do out of the box die cutting, if anybody remembers that and how to try and explain it. But what I want is I want the front bit of the car, these wheels here, to be looking like they're coming out of the page. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay my ruler down and I'm going to tear against it until I get to the embossing. And then I'm going to do the same at the bottom, a little bit harder going up, okay, until I get to the embossing. Again, by embossing, it gives you a little barrier again to work to. So now I need to get rid of this bit of the map. So I'm just going to literally cut it away. So I'm going to go round the bonnet. Again, choose a car that's nice and easy to do. And if you, because you've embossed, again, you can go nice and close to it. It's going to give you that little barrier. Okay. If you get into an awkward bit where there's too much, just go to the edge and take away the bulk. You don't have to try and do it in one. It's not like peeling an apple. Sometimes I'll do something where I'm trying to get 2 for 1 out of a piece. But on something like this, that map isn't going to get used on anything else. And then you just go till you meet that torn bit. And now, looks like our car is driving out of the map. And I'm going to put this onto a piece of brown paper, I think. Yeah, see, it's just bringing it in a different way. And it's just the transport does work really nicely for these techniques. Right. So I'm just putting a little bit of glue on there. And then position that onto my brown paper. Now I'm not adding sentiments or anything because of the card we're actually going to make. But again, you know, this would lend itself to some sentiments. And also, if you're doing this technique, have a busy paper here and a plain paper here. I mean, that could be lined paper or, you know, something if you wanted it to not be completely plain, but don't go for something as busy as that. Okay, it's got to be a nice contrast. So book page and, you know, and plain or something like, you don't want it to be too, you don't want to go from busy to busy. Okay, so into our little stack. So we've got our 5 elements that are going to go onto our car. I know they're very, very different, but the idea is to show you different things to do and then show you this mechanism. Right, so stack them back up and put my iron on it. Okay, I'm going to put some glue onto the mat there so I can work with it, and I don't need my paper now. Yes, yeah, animals are really good for that technique because anything that you want it to be stepping out of, you know, the monsters and things like that. Anything that you want to, that's got an element of movement to it, because again, it's that idea of it's moving out. Could even do it with flowers, like they're growing out of the pot or whatever. Right. So I don't know what to call this card. On the description on the live, I've called it slider. Because that's what it does, it slides out. So it sits flat like that, and then all 5 elements pull out. So it's a bit like a waterfall-y kind of thing. But every tutorial I've seen to do this has been very, very heavy on the measurements. And I'm like, oh. My problem with measurements is, one, it makes it tricky and a little bit scary. And two, it's harder for people to scale it up and scale it down. Anybody that works in miniatures and, you know, ratios and scale and stuff like that, it's quite a hard thing to be able to do, and it's just making it more complicated than it needs to be. But what you need is you need some square pockets. Well, basically it's almost like a sleeve. So I've just cut myself some rectangles that are a particular width, doesn't matter what width, but they are longer than 2 widths. Okay, so they just, you don't want it to be perfectly rectangular, you know, even, you know, that you could fold it in half and both bits be the same, you know, you just want it to be a little bit longer. So I'm going to use one of them as my measurer. So first thing I do is I put it at right angles and up into the corner there, so it's nice and straight. I'm then going to fold this one across. Okay, and what that's given me is it's given me a square shape, and that's what I need, a square with an overhang. Okay, then I take my piece out from there, lay it back on, and I'm just going to score along this edge here so that I can fold this flap underneath, so that I'm going to be able to stick that to create like a sort of, you know, a sleeve. Okay, now what I discovered was once you've done that little foldy over, if you snip the corners off, it's going to make your life a bit easier in a minute. Then I was using double-sided tape for this bit. Okay, and I know you're probably thinking, why she put that glue out there if she's going to be using double-sided tape. We are going to use the glue in a minute because we need to be able to position things and wiggle things, and double-sided tape doesn't give you that ability. And I know I've put my glue out really early, but I need it to be really tacky when I come to use it. So by putting it a little blob out to work on, it means that it's starting to become tackier quicker. So once you've done one of these, you will repeat it for however many pull-outs you want. So I have already done another 4 because we're going to do 5 pulls. Okay, so you can see they're all exactly the same. They have sat under the iron for a little bit longer, so they're nice and flat. Okay, so that's the most complicated bit, getting those squares with the overhang. But any piece of paper that is longer than it is deeper, you should be able to do this with. And if you find that when you've done your thing like that and you fold it over and they're perfectly square and you haven't got any overhang, just trim a little bit off the bottom. But using one of those to get it square means I've not had to measure. Okay, I did then have to measure to do my mats and layers, but that's another thing. But means I can scale this up. I could have a 12 by 12 version if I've got big enough paper. So you've got these sleeves, and then you need some strips. Okay, and we're going to just work logically. So we get our pockets, put them to one side. I'm going to pick up our first pocket, and what we want to do, we're going to take one of these strips, spot of glue, and it's going to be stuck to the top layer of that sleeve. Okay, so a little bit of glue. Because we've done this glue out in the warm air, it's already nice and tacky. So I'm going to put it in and right up to that corner, squeeze it down. If you wanted to hold it with a clip, you could do. Okay, but what you want to make sure is it is only stuck to the top layer there. Okay, we're going to bring our next one on, and we're going to just slide it over that strip, okay? And then we're going to fold it over. Now this is a little bit long, so I am going to snip a bit off. Okay. We're going to put, so I've turned it over. I'm going to put a little bit of blob of glue on there. And then this back one, we're going to fold that over. Tuck it into there. And again, it's only going to get stuck to the one side. So can you see, I could actually pass my awl all the way down there. Okay. And now you'll see that that one slides. Okay. So we now need to move to the next layer. So again, we blob of glue, pick it up, put it onto that front layer, slide your next one over, making sure everything's staying straight, fold it over, again making sure that this is coming up to that edge, snip off the excess if you've got it, turn it over, blob of glue, okay, and then again we need to fold it and we're tucking it in to the one at the back there. Okay, squeeze it down, double check the glue's not come out. We can see gap, gap, slidey, slidey. Okay, next one, blob of glue into that corner, press it down, slide it over, flick it, snip it, flip it over again, blob of glue, tuck it in. That flicking it over just means you're getting the glue in the right place, because what will happen if you get the glue in the wrong place, it won't slide, because if you look, that's got to slide and get into there, and that mechanism has to go behind it. So if you get the glue on the wrong side, they don't slide underneath each other, okay? There we go. And obviously give this all time to dry before you start waving it about. Okay, blob of glue. In, squeeze it down. So this is the last one. On it comes. Avoiding the blob of glue that we've got there. Flip it over. Again, by doing that flip there, you're not having to measure where your score lines are. Okay, snip it off. That's why I cut those ones extra long. Blob of glue. Fold it over, tuck it in, push it right in. Give it a pinch down. Give them a nice little pinch down, because the closer they are glued down, the easier they will slide. Okay, because you might find if it's sticking up a little bit that they'll catch. But you can just adjust it while the glue is still, and just check that they're all snugly into the corner as well, so that when it's laying flat, you can't see that the others are all behind it. And then just remember which way round it goes. There we go. So again, just let it dry like that really. So now we're going to start putting our panels on. Now, because this one, our train, has got the more dimensional elements, that needs to go on the front. Okay, and then the others, we're just going to come in and you can sort of tuck them behind. We're going to glue them down in a minute, but just make sure it's best to sort of, and it's also best to do this once it's built, because then you're not confusing yourself as to where, you know, things have to go up. If you've already stuck your toppers on, they will have to go up a particular way. Okay, so that's how it's going to look when it's opened up. So at this point, if you want to move them around because, you know, you want the busts there or whatever, you can do. And then it's just a case of getting a little bit of glue on them. And when you're doing gluing for things like this, always come slightly inside so that there's no glue going to be oozing out and messing up your mechanism. And again, I do use a wet glue for this because I want to be able to have that little bit of wiggle time. So it's kind of, it is a bit like a waterfall card in the fact that it will make people think, have you done that? But it's a really nice one. And obviously not just for cards. This would work really nicely in a journal as well. So just make sure that they're all, just give them a little slide. And we're coming in. What would you call it? I don't know, Mira. I haven't come up with a proper name for it. It probably has got a name, but I don't know. Slide out, reveal. I don't know. Maybe that's what we should do. Come on. What are we going to call it? Give it a name. I know if I ask Marvin, I know what it would be. The Marvin card. But I just think for journals and stuff, it's really nice because you can get quite a lot on here. Okay, I'm going to put a tiny bit. Oh, I'm starting to melt now. Trouble is the studio's upstairs. So not yesterday, day before, I was actually cold in the bottom half of the factory because the sun doesn't really get in there. It's concrete floors, so it's actually really nice and cool. But then I came up here to the studio in the mezzanine and I was melting a little bit. And today I'm melting again. So might not do a catch-up face shot later unless you want to be horrified by the hot mess. And I don't mean in kind of a, you know, fun way. So on the top one here, I would probably put maybe a little, you know, pull here kind of instruction. But slide it all back together. And again, as we layered that up, it is worth doing this while the glue on the hinge slidey bits is a little bit damp, because if we do need to loosen them off a little bit, we can do that without having to redo the whole mechanism. So there we go. So if you were putting it in a journal, you would fix this one down and then it will all pull out and slide back in. And just with anything like this, just run it a few times to make sure that it's running nice and smooth, and then you've got your fabulous card yet to have a name. I don't know, slide out, pull out, reveal, surprise, any of those would work, but it's a really nice fun one to do. So there you go, that's your card. And then we've got all these lovely techniques we've done with the different stamps and things. Right, hang on, bear with me. That one, sorry, bit of a melt now. So yeah, I hope you like that. I will maybe do some photos for that as well, because it is kind of, it's obviously this goes up onto YouTube so you can watch it back again, but I just wanted to be able to have it done in such a way that you're not having to measure. And the only thing that I feel was harder to explain was your card to start with. So let me just quickly spend 2 seconds, grab some bits of card from under here and tell you what I was meaning. So there we go, I've got some various cards. So Don't think it has to be square. Probably would work if it wasn't square, as long as all your pieces are the same size. So let me just swap back to here. So if I was going to try and do it with an A5 piece, if I was wanting to make my A5 piece square, obviously there's not enough to fold over there. But if I cut my A5 in half down the middle, and then put one up there and fold it across, I've got plenty there. I can use that. But if you didn't want to have as much of an overhang, obviously what you would do on your first piece, just give you a rough, and then you've got your piece that you've got your template for doing. So probably the easiest way is if you had a specific thing that you wanted to put on it, you know, you had a specific size, like, I don't know, distress ink. You wanted it to be, you know, because you wanted it to fit in a journal page. Because the only thing we need to do is get that. So fold your paper so that you've got it the width of your distress ink. And then all you need to do is leave yourself a little bit of an overhang. Okay, and that's your template one. Okay, so use that to cut a few more, and then you can use that to do your folding, and then you can have them any size you want. And that's what I wanted to try and do it. So hopefully that makes sense, but if not, just double. If you are somebody who likes to work with measurements, whatever size topper you've got, make your card double the length plus a centimetre, and that will be adequate. Or if you prefer to work in inches, add ½ an inch. Yeah, and then that would give you your ones. But if you want to do it my way, where you don't even have to measure, you just use your piece of card and then I'll give you it. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I'll get this up on the old YouTube, if YouTube's behaving itself. I had real trouble last time. And then you can watch it back time and time again, because I think it is a really nice one. And I just think in journals and stuff, because look, it compacts down, that's what's nice, and you can see. And also sort of, it looks like it's a little book, but you can't really open it. So it is a nice one. But yes, so we need to come up with a name for it, and we'll get making some more of these. So quick recap, the stamps are on the internet under today's date. We don't have huge amounts of stock of the Spitfire over the countryside, just to let you know. And so what have we got? So tomorrow I'm in Daventry at the Beautiful Bookshop doing bookbinding. Saturday I'm bookbinding. Sunday it is the Print with Nature workshop for those that have signed up. And then next week, so we've got Wednesday normal, Friday I'm back on Hobby Maker, and then I think Sunday, so a week on Sunday, we've got the Mixed Media workshop, which is one where you'll be using all your stash from home, and we will make a nice canvas with loads of different techniques and stuff. So if you want to sign up for that, that's on the website as well. But in the meantime, stay hydrated, she says, with our homemade cherry cordial. And I will see you same time, same place next week. Take care, and I will see you soon.